let's chill out, relax, and have some hobby fun, yeah? Sound good? Welcome back to Lizard of Doom. I am Max. Now, I operate quite like a lot of you at home. I put a lot of pressure on myself to paint miniatures as best I can all the time. And that is quite a stressful place to be in when you're trying to enjoy your hobby. More recently, the Christmas video, I was working under the kind of the process where every stroke really mattered and everything was really precise and had to be for it to be perfect. Let's move away from that today and have fun and get a little bit more of a painterly style and just enjoy the process. So drop a little like down there, thank you, give that a little tickle, and subscribe if you aren't already, and let's be positive about the hobby and enjoy it. I'm not Jay from Eons of Battle. Atomic Mass Games has sent me a big box of goodies. In it is these 2 boxes of Ewoks. That is something I am very interested in, so let's have fun, kind of move away from the Warhammer for today and paint something that has a lot less kind of time commitment to it, because this is an army. I went with a double zenithal to undercoat these. Black spray with Xandri dust spray over the top, and then white bone from Colourforge over the top of that. This is to create a nice gradient in the undercoat, ready for some contrast paint. Like I said, I want to bash these out quick and have a lot of fun. So the white is purely down from the top as the final zenithal, and then from like a 45-degree angle was the Xandri dust, and from underneath, just left in the recesses, is the black. It will keep the nice warm tones of the Xandri dust showing through, as these Ewoks need to be nice, naturey, browny, warm boys. Then I had a little idea for how I could get these characters the right colour. I would experiment with all my different contrast paints that were roughly the right colour, nice neutral tones, nice nature tones, on all of the other side Ewoks. These little archers and the spearmen, they come 3 on a base, that's closest you can get to a horde army in this game, and it is a good experiment to see whether or not these contrast paints are the right colours for the characters, which do appear in movies briefly, so they have specific colours that they need to be. If you want to do it that way, you don't have to do it that way. You know, you have free will. These are your own models, and just enjoy them as you will. Most of these colours that I experimented with worked really well. I'll show you a shot at the end, but these were a lot of fun just to kind of smash through and just see what worked. It's nice to have a little project like this every now and then and experiment. I've been painting a lot of Tau recently, and probably the next video is going to be going back to Tau, so it's nice to paint something that you know is not a yellow robot. Talking of yellow, Nazdrag Yellow was a little bit of a gamble, but I could afford to gamble at this stage in this project, and it made the Ewok look like Winnie the Pooh, so this is one I would go over again with some brown contrast. Strangely enough, skin tones did work really well on this. They are quite brown, these skin tone contrast paints, and also bone colours work nicely as well for the paler Ewoks. But yeah, it was fun to experiment, and it was fun to experiment on models that I was actually painting up. Tester models within the army are usually the best tester models because they're the same model that you'll be painting, and it's also useful to get them painted at the same time as your experiment and not afterwards, saving a little bit of time, a little bit of effort. And at the end of all this, we have everyone with their paints next to them, so I could decide on these characters. The grey one needed Basilica Grey, that one needed Skeleton Horde, this one needed some Snakebite Leather, and this one needed some Gargak Sewer. After that, this experiment also showed me which ones I should be using for the leathers too. Cygor Brown is a nice reddy brown, so this would be nice for the dark leather cowls on top of the Ewoks, and also Snakebite Leather would be useful for that too. That would create a more yellowy leather on top of these, which some of the Ewoks in the films do have headpieces like that. And I also used Gargak Sewer to do all of the wood, including the trees on their bases. This was really nice, really simple, really quick, something that I bashed out in a couple of days. Mantis Warrior Green is a lovely bright green, and I use that for all the naturey bits on their bases, such as these leaves and little bits of moss on the trees. That was really nice and bright, and a good base to work from for plants. After that, I put some brown contrast paint just for coverage on the base, but I did have a bit of a problem. It's a problem I've had before with Colourforge sprays. They are a little hydrophobic. Look at this stuff shrink back. I maybe should have gone with a normal paint rather than a contrast paint, because it maybe would have stuck better. Any brown would have done here because I'm just getting coverage for when I put basing medium over the top. I I gave the rest of the bits on the miniature that weren't coloured with contrast paint a base coat and then a wash over the top, because working with contrast paint is kind of inherently messy and it's necessary to tidy up the in-between bits with normal paint. I also based them at this point because it was the end of the day when I was working on these and I wanted some instant dopamine of having models that kind of looked done. I wouldn't normally base at this point because I still had work to do, but I wanted to see kind of where I was at as a whole on these miniatures. I based them with some baked dirt and some grass tufts from Gamer Grass. I also used some little yellow flower ones from Gamer Grass as well. These are very nice little foresty bases, very easy, very cheap. Gamer Grass tufts are only about £5 depending where you get them. They're pretty damn good and they are the best quality in my opinion. With these guys looking okay, technically tabletop ready, but not really my standards of tabletop ready. I would like to push them a little bit further from this, and the zenithal is baked in there very nicely from mid-tones of that Xandri dust up to the white bone on the very tops. So that is perfect for placing my highlights. It's already there for me, I just have to colour by numbers now. Contrast paint, I believe, should be used as a base and wash cheat. This is what I've done on the rest of the areas, such as the bones and the leather straps and bags. Just a quick base coat and shade. That's what contrast paint should be. I don't believe it should be like the finished product. I think it needs a little bit more work up from there. The way I would work these up from there is to use stippling, a nice kind of messy method of stippling where I'm not really taking that much care. I'm just roughly making sure the paint is in the right places while staying within the lines and having fun. When stippling over contrast paint or just layering over contrast paint, it is important to pick a colour that is lighter than the lightest part of your contrast paint. I've done this only just. I'm keeping it very subtle with the highlights on the fur on these guys. I want them to remain quite dark because they are hunters in the forest. You know, they shouldn't be bright and garish that much. Some of them are paler than the rest, but these brown ones I want to keep nice and subtle. The reason you want to keep it brighter than the brightest part of your contrast paint is because it will look really off if it's not. You'll have patches that are brighter than your highlights. This brown I'm using is a mixture of different browns that were on my palette, and it is just above the brown of the highest points where the white bone was sprayed on this miniature. Stippling, this is 4 times speed, and this takes me a minute to get through in this video, so 4 minutes. 4 minutes to highlight one guy completely. That's pretty good as far as army painting goes, and this isn't a very big army, you know, I've got 12 guys to get through, so it's pretty good. 4 minutes to highlight each one's fur, not bad. Can do this all in a day. And these are the perfect models to try the stippling on because they are lovely and furry and bumpy, so the texture really goes well with these guys. You can see this grey is actually Karak stone, and it is just brighter than the brightest parts of this grey, but still nice and natural looking, not pushed too far, looks very, very good. And I'm kind of doing the equivalent of jitter clicking when I highlight here, just little tappy taps to put down the colour, thinned layers, working back over the areas where I think it needs a little bit more as they dry, because thinned layers dry a lot quicker, so you can just like do the back, then do an arm, then pop back to the back if you need to, and it is lovely and easy, no pressure, no hard work, not trying to paint a golden demon entry, just having fun with my miniatures, which is something that I struggle to do because I put a lot of pressure on myself to make stuff for this channel, so it's nice just to consciously make the effort to enjoy the miniatures. And a little project like these Star Wars miniatures is perfect because you don't need many to play the game, you need 2 boxes, and this is 2 boxes of Ewoks, and that is job done, game ready. I think the paler Ewoks are actually my more favourite Ewoks. This little grey one is lovely, and it is my favourite shaman of the group. When doing the fur, I only used 1 highlight step up. This is to keep it quite muted and nice and not make it pop out too much, but the leather would be different to get the kind of wear and tear on the edges and highlights. I want to do 2. So I would be 1 step up layer and then an edge highlight on top of that, still with the stippling method. Now, snakebite leather is a very popular contrast paint for leather, and this is how you highlight up from it. So if you're using snakebite leather, listen up. Baylor brown is a really good yellowy brown, and it is perfect to highlight up from snakebite leather for your first highlight. I applied this in little stipply motions. I know I have gone over scratchy leather many times very thoroughly in my Painting a Kill Team in a Day video, so if you haven't seen that and you want to see how to paint maybe nicer leather than this, I did put a bit more effort into that leather with the scratchiness of it. That is the video to watch for scratchy leather. Then after this I would mix in a little bit of ice yellow from Vallejo. This is a lovely bright yellowy white, and it just punches it up a little bit more. The reason you see a lot of people on YouTube use colours like ice yellow or sunny skin tone from Vallejo is because there is a little bit of fluorescent paint in there. And that fluorescent paint really raises the brightness of the colour. Ice yellow and sunny skin tone both use a little bit of fluorescent yellow, and it looks really nice, especially when mixed in with other paints such as Bale or Brown, because it will just give it that little bit of punch it needs, whereas if you mixed it with a white, it would desaturate it a lot and make it not so yellowy brown and golden. I just give it a little bit of a tickle with this mixture, giving it little dots of wear marks and scratches on the edges and top bits of this leather, just to make it look like it was a rough piece of fabric that had been battered around the forest by this little teddy bear man for a while. Then to do a more red, darker leather, it's the Cygor Brown contrast paint and then stippling on the Doomball Brown from Games Workshop after that. Then up to Tuscarora Fur to finish that off. After I was done adding texture and highlights to my leather, it was time to tidy up that black rim a little bit. I'd been fingering my rim a little bit too much, and after you finger your rim, you will need to clean it. So if you only take away one thing from this video, let it be that you always need to have a clean rim. Now we've covered that important lesson, let's have a look at the finished product. We go from the drab, boring, just base coated and shaded or contrast painted version of this to this. The final, finished, highlighted version. This is why I think it is always worth putting the effort in and taking a little bit further than just contrast paint. It hasn't taken me much extra time to get to this point, but these boys are looking a lot better than they did earlier with just the contrast paint or just shades and washes over a base coat. This is what I'd call tabletop ready standard. They are highlighted and they are ready to rock. I really like Vallejo browns. I've started to slowly replace all my Citadel paints with Vallejo model colour paints. They are a much nicer and much matter paint. Games Workshop paints are very satin, and I'm trying to move away from that as I explore my painting journey. These guys have been a really fun little project and a nice little gap between other things Warhammer. It's always nice to have a little change and enjoy what you're doing. These may not be the best painted miniatures I've ever done, they may not even be close, but I had fun, and that is the point of a hobby. I enjoyed my hobby, and it was a good time for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching it. Consider subscribing if you're not already. Thank you to all my Patreons that you saw over the end shots there. If you would like to help support this channel, shablam, the link is up there, and I really appreciate everyone who signs up from as little as £3 a month to help me do the things that I do on this channel, and hopefully bring you some enjoyable and positive hobby content. Leave a like for the like gods, leave a comment for the algorithm throne, and I will see you next time. Remember, it's not a pile of shame, it's a pile of future fun. Peace!